Denise Roche.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to call for the Greens and the Committee of the whole House of this, the Health and Safety Reform Bill. Sir, in this House, the biggest health and safety risk we probably face is a paper cut, or maybe a burn on our ears from our cell phones. Yeah, headaches from listening to bad speeches. We are in a privileged position, sir. We are in a privileged position where we are not facing danger every day, like the people who work in our forests, who work in our farms, who work in our mines, who work in the manufacturing sector and the construction sector. Sir, it behoves us to remember that we live in a very privileged position and we have the power to make the world safer, the workplace safer for so many workers, in fact all the workers of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'm going to make a few general points and then I'm going to get into a bit more detail, and like others have said, we will be debating this bill in detail. But one of the points that I wanted to make, and I was reminded of this before I came down to the House to speak, was that nearly every single New Zealander knows someone, if they are not someone, who has had an injury at work or has been affected by somebody who has died at work. When you have nearly 300 people dying at work over the last 6 years, and we are a small country, it's inevitable that we need to face their loved ones and be able to say to them, we've done our best to make the world a safer place for you and your loved ones, and that is your right, that is your legacy, sir. In my own family, sir, I remember when my dad came home when I was 10 years old. He was a shunter on the railways, and he came home 10 hours late with half his hand missing. Now, that was one of those situations where a dangerous workplace was his workplace, and he knew the dangers and he took those risks every day. But he was never able to play the banjo again. He was off work for a year, and we struggled during that time, sir. Up in my office, there's another worker, another office worker that gives support to us, and she told me that she was related to one of the 29 in the Pike River mine whose bodies still lie in the mine, sir. And I wanted to say to her that I was going to do my best to make sure that after today we would have a law that would mean that those sorts of tragedies, those sorts of accidents wouldn't happen again. But sir, as we come in to debate the detail of the bill, I'm not convinced that that's what we're going to end up with. Where this came from, where the Health and Safety Reform Bill came from, sir, was the result of the Pike River Royal Commission, the Pike River Mine Tragedy Royal Commission, and the recommendations that they made. It also came from the task force into workplace health and safety. Now, they made recommendations, and they were good recommendations. And I want to just refer initially to the comment from the chair of the Independent Task Force, Rob Jager, who says, and he put it to Parliament really, that a key challenge in addressing workplace health and safety is that it requires balancing the interests and needs of a number of participants, particularly employers and workers. We're starting with a 20-year-old system that did not find that balance. Yet the task has become rather more complex rather than less over time. In their view, they said they'd found a good balance requiring compromise by all parties that will both improve outcomes substantially and respect all parties' needs. It would make substantial changes to the balance, and we have to, or we will lose the vital support of some participants and significantly weaken the potential benefits. Now, the bill that came to the House, we supported too, sir, because although we could see that it was flawed in many parts, it did have the basis in the recommended Australian Model Workplace Health and Safety Act, the Model Act. But, sir, this government has eviscerated it, and And even today, Mr Chair, and even today, sir, we come back to this Parliament to debate the detail of the bill to find that some of those details have changed. And if we're looking at process, just looking at process, not the detail at the moment, just looking at process, this is appalling. How on earth are we supposed to make good decisions when we haven't had the discussion and the debate during the Select Committee or allowed others to actually submit on what the government is basically cobbling together at the last minute? And I acknowledge your efforts, Minister, to cobble the bill together at the last minute. Sir, where this bill falls down in part 1 and throughout the bill is around the participation. And this is what the chair of the Independent Task Force referred to when he said that there needs to be a balance. In our view, and in the view of this side, that balance has been lost because the ability for workers to participate in their own health and safety is stifled frequently throughout the bill. And there's a few, there's a few examples. One is around the rights of workers in small to medium enterprises with 20 or less workers who are deemed to be in a non-high-risk workplace. These workers don't get the same rights as other workers, and I think as the previous speaker commented before, that's around about 300,000 workers in New Zealand. I commend the Minister for bringing in or circulating an outline of what might be deemed to be high risk, but that is not in the bill at this stage and is yet to be consulted on, and so we have to take it on trust. Now, sir, many workers when they go to work would rather rely on their workmates for health and safety than the government, because many, sir, don't trust the government. This bill is about who's in and who's out. So there's some who are in because they're in a workplace that's over 20, or they're out. And actually the changes that the Minister wants to make there is that the PCBU just has to inform that workforce that they're out. There's no consultation, there's no decision making by the workers, there's no balance to allow the workers to be able to say, we actually want a health and safety rep and a health and safety committee on our workplace. The others who are left out of the legislation, sir, are people who work in home occupiers. Now, we're entering a situation where more and more frail people with disabilities are being cared for in their own homes. And the government has in the past talked about offering voucher systems so that those people can become employers of the home care workers that they wish to have care for them, which, you know, is laudable actually. It empowers those clients. However, those workers would be exempted from the health and safety legislation. They're not exempted from other employment law. They're not exempted from the Minimum Wage Act, but they would be exempted from health and safety legislation purely because the work occurs in the homeowner's own home. I can't see a justification for that. We're already in a situation where home care workers are exploited through their wages to a situation where they now get exploited around health and safety, sir. I guess the other people who are left out of this situation are the workers who want to have a health and safety committee, who want to elect a health and safety committee because they don't have the right to elect a health and safety committee. It is actually the employer's right to decide if there'll be a health and safety committee and who will be on the health and safety committee. If they are fortunate enough to have a health and safety rep, that person doesn't necessarily have to go on the health and safety committee either. And, of course, the health and safety committee don't actually get to access training as a right either. There's also the situation of who health and safety reps, presuming you actually do get one, get to represent. Now, I understand that there is an SOP in front of the House, a supplementary order paper, suggesting that workers should actually bless them, be able to...
Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr Chair.